public hearing. The topic is annexation of 58865 Furlock Park Street, OHM Equity Partners LLC. I'll turn it over to our associate planner, Jenny Dimshow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have to go through the script. This is a quasi-judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for an annexation. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 2400 on map 4 North, 1 West, 8BB. The applicant is OHM Equity Partners LLC and the owner is the same. Because quasi-judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we will take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the council wish to declare an ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias in this matter? Hearing none. Does anyone from the audience object to the ability of a counselor to make a fair decision? Hearing none. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows. Required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor, neutral, those opposed, and rebuttal by the applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and then decision. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to City Code and ORS 1977635. The following is a list of applicable substantive criteria for this decision. St. Helens Municipal Code 1728030, 1708040, Section 1, 1708060, and 1711230. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward these applicable substantive criteria as described, or other criteria in the plan, such as the comp plan, or land use regulation, such as that found in the development code, which the person believes applies to this decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing, in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approval authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue, and precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So, we can get into the staff report. So this is an annexation on Furlock Park Street. It is currently zoned as the Columbia County multifamily residential. In our comprehensive plan, you can see First Street there, kind of going east-west. In our comp plan, First Street is kind of the dividing line between multifamily residential and then the single-family residential, R10, to the south. So this property is kind of right on that border. It's actually the last property that is zoned for that multifamily residential. It's 19,166 square feet, or just under half an acre. It borders the North Fork McNulty Creek along the west side of it. So there's some, floodplain, and there's a riparian corridor along the western side of the property. The dwelling is currently connected to city water. And there are some properties that are not in the city but connected to water because it was more of a recent practice that we started mandating annexation to connect to city utilities. And fittingly, that's why this property is applying for annexation. They have a failing septic system, according to the county. And at a previous city council meeting, you authorized for them to use a step system, a step sewer system. And that's because of the shallow sewer line, if I remember right. It's only 2 feet deep.
Yeah, it can't be extended to serve that property.
Yeah. I don't know if you could hear Sue, but the sewer line, the main line is too far and can't be extended because of the topography to this property. So a step system was allowed. Let's see. This annexation won't be subject to a majority vote. Because it meets all the criteria in the state statute for not being subject to voter approval. We talked about sewer. It does abut city limits, so it's not an annexation that we will just sit on until it gets, contiguous. We will annex this in once it goes through the formal processes tonight. So as I said, the comp plan designation is currently unincorporated multifamily residential, and the only zoning option available for us tonight is apartment residential. So there's not really a conversation about zoning for this annexation, since there's only one possible zoning when we annex. So it's pretty simple. The Planning Commission had its hearing and they unanimously recommended approval. Don't really have anything else unless there are questions.
The question I have is for Sue, are a lot of those properties failing in their sewer system?
I'm only aware of one other property that's been declared actually failed without the opportunity to rebuild on that property, and that was the property on First Street that about 15 years ago, no, it's been longer than that, over 20 years ago, connected to the public sewer through a step system.
Are the ones along the creek though?
I'm not personally aware of those. I would not be surprised, but I have not heard any actual reports from the county sanitarian indicating that.
Are any of those systems on sand filter?
I don't have that information. I don't know if Jen has it.
That's something that the county sanitarian keeps track of. She regulates all the septic systems, so they would have records.
Any other questions for staff? You wanna see if there's any public
Yeah, if
comment?
not, does anyone want to testify? I don't think the applicant is here tonight.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's not related so much as the zoning as in talking about hooking up to the sewer. Does the sewer have the capacity for all of those lots to be hooked up?
In the future, for the lots that it would be able to serve, yes. But in the future, that lot and all of the lots south of about where the city limits line is,
Right.
where the red dotted line goes around, all of that would eventually drain to the south and go down Furlock out to our lift station that we have that's on the corner of Furlock and Highway 30 in front of the dollar store.
Okay.
Instead of going the other direction, it's
The thought
topography-wise
process
it
in
won't go.
my head is that if one person gets included in the city limits to get hooked up to sewer, then everybody in that area is like, oh, I wanna do that. And it's like, do we have the capacity to do that?
Yeah,
Because it's like, my neighbor got it, now I want it, and then
Yes.
can we do that?
yes. So that system would have the capacity to continue to serve what it can physically serve, but not everybody's going to be allowed to hook up with a step system. This was a special case, just as the other case was some 20 years ago, because of the failed on-site system that the county deemed non-repairable. And they didn't have an option for any other type of, like an above-ground sand filter would not work on either one of those sites, and the house would be unlivable, obviously, without sanitation service.
I just wanted, I didn't wanna be like, I'm in first and everybody else is too bad.
Yes, correct, yes. And in the future, when the rest of that area is served by a public system that will drain the other direction, then that house would have to hook up to the other sewer that would
And
go
when
in
that
the other
happens,
direction.
who bears the cost of that?
Well, in this particular location, based on our previous studies, it would be mostly constructed through a local improvement district. So individual property owners would pay a proportion of the construction of that, with some city participation in some of the, like the relocation of the pump station and the upsizing of that to handle the additional flows. Those would be SDCs.
So glad you're
Help
here.
pay for that.
Yeah, I just, I always, as questions come up and people hear something in a hearing, they're like, wait, I have that problem at my house, or I live on that block, can I get on that? clarification of that.
Yeah, again, special circumstances because of the fact of the failed system with no opportunity to replace it and making the house uninhabitable.
So Jen, with the streamline annexation process that's happening with this, that's largely due to adjacent property in the city, correct?
Yeah, there's criteria, here, I'll go
Right.
through them. There's just 4 things that make it faster.
Got it.
So one is that the property's within the urban growth boundary.
Right.
It does. The property is subject to the city's comp plan. It does. We're zoning it based on the comp plan. It's contiguous to city limits or is separated by only a public right-of-way or body of water.
Got it.
And then the last one is property conforms to all other city requirements.
Okay,
So if it's meets all 4 of those, we skip the voter approval.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's probably almost impossible for someone who's outside of the urban growth boundary to even proceed. Is that correct?
Yeah, you have to be
Okay, that-
within the urban growth boundary to file for an annexation.
Yeah. So that's a definite.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
that's
want-
just based on state law.
Exactly. That's why I wanted clarification with that. Thank you.
And basically, the lift station they put in, if other people wanna tie in, they'll pay a percentage to that person. And we'll get the SDCs, but they'll pay a percentage for that local district.
Well, there's two ways it could potentially be done, but the most logical would be a local improvement district
Yeah.
where the majority of the affected property owners would have to come to the city and say, hey, we really want sewer in our neighborhood. And then we will go through the process of putting together preliminary, not really design, but the basic necessities for installing that, and then, okay, here's probably about what it's gonna cost, and then those property owners have the opportunity to vote yes or no. And if the majority of them want to proceed, then we go through the whole public process of finalizing the plans and bidding it out and building the sewer, and then the final costs are assessed to the property owners based on the previously approved percentage division. Each property pays a certain percentage of that, and then those costs are assessed to the property owners, and then depending on how that payment plan is set up. The other option of doing it would be an advanced finance district, which is where basically one
Yes.
person or,
Finance.
yeah, they can go ahead and build it with prior council approval and say, hey, I want to build this now for, in this particular area, and it's going to benefit these 50 properties, and so each one of these properties is going to have to pay me back when they hook up to it within a specified time period. And that is all designated by the council as far as how long that time period is. It's usually 10 years, but it can be whatever you want. There may be some limitations in the state law for that, but those would be the 2 ways that it would most likely get built, as a developer could do it, or the individual property owners as a group would come in and ask for it to proceed. And because most of this is already divided and pretty well developed, the local improvement district would be the most likely way to have that constructed.
Where's the sewer line at that they have to hook up to?
It's 190 feet north of the subject property.
Yeah, so where you see the city limits line come down on,
Yeah, right.
yeah, right in there, it's in Furlock Park
Yeah.
Road, Furlock Park Street, I guess that is right there, just slightly up from the arrow.
Yeah.
About where that is, just slightly to the left within the right-of-way. Right about there. And because the road is coming down and the sewer's going towards Gable Road, topography-wise, it can't be extended any further than it is. Yeah, it's only about just slightly over 2 feet there.
Gravity.
Yeah, there's no option for gravity, yeah.
So they have to pay whatever it is, 100 feet or so to get up to it?
They would, yeah, they have to pay a contractor to build a private pressure line going up the right-of-way and then connect over to the public sewer.
And do we charge them to hook up to the?
Absolutely.
System development
Yep.
charges, all the whole.
Yeah.
It's just affluent, so it's not a big bill, right?
It's effluent, yes. Septic tank effluent pump system is step system.
I say affluent, although it's unaffluent and affluent. All right, I think we've asked enough questions, and it's that time, so let's close this hearing. And we'll get Kathy, do you need to restart, or can we go right into it? You need to restart? Okay, we'll give Kathy just a minute here.